Joining us now, Democratic Senator Chris Coons of Delaware. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf. It's been a very busy weekend.
It certainly has. Do you agree with the outgoing CIA director's assessment that Donald Trump doesn't understand Russia?
I'm gravely concerned that Donald Trump not only doesn't understand Russia and Vladimir Putin, but doesn't understand how to conduct himself in a balanced and thoughtful way. Over this weekend, Donald Trump's been very busy picking fights with NATO, with Chancellor Merkel of Germany, with the head of the CIA, with China over the One China policy, with Republicans in Congress over the ACA repeal, and with living civil rights legend John Lewis. I can't imagine a more destabilizing weekend, Wolf.
What about the president-elect's assertion once again in these newspaper interviews over the weekend that NATO is an obsolete alliance?
Well, to try and be gracious for a moment, I think the one point Donald Trump tried to make there was that NATO wasn't originally created to confront terrorism. But it is far from obsolete. Anyone who knows the recent history of NATO knows that the one time NATO has come together to defend a member state was when all NATO members came to our defense after 9/11. Thousands of NATO troops from Western Europe have joined our troops in Afghanistan. Many have died. Hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars of European funds have been spent in our joint effort in Afghanistan. To suggest that it's obsolete in the face of the terrorist attack on the United States in 9/11 and in the face of a resurgent Russia is frankly to show a lack of historical knowledge, and I suspect is somewhat naive.
The nominee to become the next Secretary of Defense, retired General James Mattis, has a much harder line when it comes to Russia than the president-elect. Says he wants to maintain the strongest possible relationship with NATO at the same time. How much influence do you think he will have, the incoming defense chief, on the president-elect?
Well, Wolf, I hope he will have some strong influence as we are newly deploying American troops into Poland, the eastern edge of NATO, facing potential Russian aggression. I think General Madison, in his confirmation hearing, acquitted himself well. He spoke on a number of important issues in ways that really differed from what Donald Trump said as candidate, and in ways that I think were reassuring to both Republicans and Democrats on the Armed Services Committee.
Do you believe that the U.S. military exercises taking place in Eastern Europe are an effective deterrent to Putin?
They're important. I think we need to strengthen them. Wolf, as you know, I led a bipartisan delegation to the Czech Republic, Ukraine, and Estonia in August, and I'm convinced we need a stronger presence. The United States has withdrawn too much from Western Europe. We need to invest in and strengthen our NATO alliances, in particular to protect the Baltic states from Russian aggression.
What do you make of the Kremlin's assertion that these military exercises are simply a provocation?
Well, Russia has engaged in many more so-called snap exercises all along the eastern border of NATO. In recent years, they've moved significant troops, new material, equipment, and supplies, and have engaged in many much larger and more provocative acts, crossing into NATO airspace and into our naval space off the coasts and above the territory of NATO countries. Russia has frankly been very provocative in recent months.
As you know, many of your Democratic colleagues, especially in the House of Representatives, say they won't be attending Donald Trump's inauguration on Friday. Congressman John Lewis says Trump won't be a legitimate president. Are they sending, I should say, the Democrats who are boycotting the presidential inauguration, are they sending the right message?
Well, I think there was an important development in the Senate late last week, Wolf, when the Republican chair and Democratic co-chair, vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee agreed that they are going to proceed to hold hearings into whether or not there was inappropriate connections between the Trump campaign and the Russian government or Russian intelligence. I'm going to attend the inauguration. I think it is important to be there along with President Obama and Vice President Biden and Hillary Clinton as we witness the peaceful transition of power. But I do think that a significant number of Democratic members of the House, several dozen now, are sending a signal that they intend to challenge President Trump forcefully. And many of us, Republican and Democrat, are going to question his views on Vladimir Putin and Russia and what role they may or may not have played in undermining the independence of our electoral process.
Senator Chris Coons, thanks very much for joining us.